What's up, everybody? So this is my old school review of Some Kind of Wonderful, written by John Hughes, directed by Howard Deutch. Now, I think this is one of those John Hughes movies that really flies under the radar and is arguably his best one. Stars Eric Stotlz, Leah Thompson, Mary Stuart Masterson, great appearance by Elias Cotes. And it's basically the response, John Hughes' response to Pretty in Pink. So I did my video on Pretty in Pink a few days ago, and if in that video I talk about how the ending was changed, where originally Molly Ringwald was supposed to end up with Ducky. And of course, they did test audiences, and audience did not like that, and so she ended up with Blaine, played by Andrew McCarthy. And so, John Hughes begrudgingly made that change, and then I think he was still stewing about that. So then he writes Some Kind of Wonderful, which takes the opposite ending. And it's basically kind of the same storyline, so you have Eric Stoltz's character, Keith, who is just pining for Leah Thompson's character, Amanda Jones. And his best friend is Watts, played by Mary Stuart Masterson. He's very much like that, social outcast kind of guy. He not friends with any of the popular kids. He kind of is in his own world. He works at a gas station, very artistic, great painter. And so it's not exactly that kind of high school experience that lends itself to, having a great social life, having lots of friends, supposedly like Amanda Jones and her boyfriend, played by Eric Sheffer. And so it's a great story because it's different from the other John Hughes movies in the sense of it's played very seriously. There's an earnestness to it that I really enjoyed because it feels very teenager. Like when you are a teenager, there isn't that reverence. There isn't that sense of humor, that maybe you would like to have that you see in Ferris Bueller, in Weird Science, and Breakfast Club and all the others. You feel like it's the end of the world every day in some way, shape, or form. And so I think they really captured that feeling of being a teenager. Like the stakes are just so high, and as the story progresses and Leah Thompson's character, Amanda Jones, she's with Eric Schaefer's character, he's the popular kid, the one that, has all the clout that there is, but he doesn't treat her very well. And then finally, when she decides to break up with him and then finally go on a date with Eric Stoltz's character, that kind of begins her social downfall. And you see how it's everything, for these teenagers, So I think they did a really great job at depicting that. What I also think is just really, really great is, so there's a scene where Keith is with his father. It's right before he goes out on the date with Amanda Jones, and it starts off a very heated conversation, but then really it's a heart-to-heart between a father and a son. And you really kind of see that when, the boy becomes a teenager, he starts to kind of couple away from his father because he's trying to kind of basically become his own man. And so there's a lot that goes unheard and unsaid. And so when Eric Stoltz finally says hey, did you know those kids in school that didn't really fit in? And then he was yeah, of course I did. It was yeah, well, I'm one of those guys. And just kind of the look of shock on his father's face, and he says to him, look, Dad, I'm an art student. I work at a gas station. My best friend's a town boy, and so, there's finally that realization of, oh, I think I know who my son is, but there's a lot that I have not taken into account. Maybe whether it's the responsibilities as a father and providing and protecting all of that, and at the same time, your son trying to become his own man that distance prevents you from seeing your son for what his present day circumstances really are. I thought that was an amazing kind of, bonding moment. Like, let's be honest with each other, man to man, so to speak. And I think the other thing that is really great is how the build up to the ending happens little by little. Specifically with, without giving away, spoilers, when the date ends up at the party of Craig Sheffer, excuse me, I've been saying Eric Sheffer this whole time. When Craig Sheffer's character, Hardy, has the big house party at his house and everyone is there, and then they finally show up. And then there's a lot of trouble that is brewing, and then all of a sudden, the cavalry comes. And it subverts the audience. You didn't think that was going to happen, but when it does, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And there's a great build up to that. And if you haven't seen it, you'll see how the pieces come together in the end. And of course, this isn't a spoiler because I kind of said it in the beginning, how it's a response to Pretty in Pink. Instead of Eric Stotlz ending up with the girl that he'd been pining for this entire time, he ends up with Watts, who has been pining for him. And then he kind of realizes who she is to him and what she will do for him, and that he will never really have somebody other than her that can do what she does for him. And he finally kind of appreciates that. And has probably one of the greatest lines, personally, I think, ever written. And when you see the movie, you'll understand what it means. But when he says to her, it's like, you look good in my future. You look good wearing my future. Perfect way to kind of end things off, to kind of cap off this great movie. It's not as funny as a lot of other John Hughes movies is, but I think that plays to the strengths and to what I believe is kind of the timeless quality of this movie. Anyways, what about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, give me a follow, and I'll see you guys next time.